Here we go, a short video on formatted printing. We're going to simply compare Python to Java. Imagine you were asked, you were given these 5 variables in Python, and those respective values saved in them, and you were asked to print this. Let me zoom way in. You're asked to print this statement right here. And we don't want to hard code. When I say print that statement, we don't mean we want you to just print this, right? Because maybe these values, 74983, maybe they came from computations or from the user. So we don't know the values that are stored inside those variables. So we can't print it hard-coded like this. We want to actually print the values of the variables. So if you did not know formatted printing in Python, you would have either of these 2 print statements, right? Here's a standard first way of printing that students learn, new learners will see, where you put the comma between the various parameters of this print function. Or if you don't use the comma, we could have used concatenation to concatenate all these strings together. So we have to break up this portion of the string and then concatenate to that the 7, which in Python you first have to convert it to a string using the string function, because in Python you can only concatenate strings. That's nasty. Absolutely nasty. It's hideous. Let's look at that same nastiness in Java. So here's a Java program that I made a new project. I called it formatted printing. And let's see, we have these exact same 5 variables with the same values in them. And once again, I want to print that exact statement. Here's how you would do that without formatted printing in Java using concatenation. It's not as bad as in Python, because Python you can only concatenate strings, whereas Java, as we know, we can concatenate strings with numbers directly, and that will in turn become a string, right? So this is not strictly an addition sign, it's a concatenation, and Java looks at both sides of that plus sign and says, hey, I see a string here, I see a number here, we'll make a string. So here's how we would print that, and that's just, it's nasty. Again, it's a little bit better than Python, but it's hideous. So hopefully any Python programmers watching this, they've seen formatted printing in Python. How would you do that in Python? Remember, the objective is we want to print this, right? Well, this is the answer. And I want to very quickly show you the easy way how you would do that in Python. If you're given an exact statement that you'd like to print, I actually just take that statement, I put it inside the string that I'm trying to print. I then say .format, and of course I want to print the A, B, the C, the D, and the E. I want to grab those values from their respective variables. I want to grab those literals. And now, of course, here I need to replace this 7 with what? With a pair of curly brackets. That was a pair of square brackets. Here's a pair of curly brackets. Replace the 7 with curly brackets, the 4, the 9, the 8, and the 3. This is formatted printing in Python. Now, there's a newer type of formatted printing where you even put an F over here, and it makes it even easier of how you do this. But we're not going to do that for the purposes of this video, because that doesn't translate as clearly to Java. This method of formatted printing does translate clearly to Java. So what's going on here? When the interpreter reads this, the interpreter says, oh, you want me to print the print function? Cool. I got you, the interpreter says. And we have a quote, a double quote. The interpreter says, oh, you must be printing a string. Cool, I got you. You're printing an A, you print a space, you print an I, you print an S, then you print another space, and then Python sees that you're printing a pair of curly brackets. So Python says, whoa, this is something important. You don't really want to print curly brackets here. You must be trying to do formatted printing. And Python looks over here and sees, sure enough, you're doing formatted printing, and you're going to give the variable that you want the value from to go inside that placeholder, right? This is formatted printing in Python. It's something we're well familiar with. That same exact example here in Java. How can we do this? So what you see that I've done is I'm showing the Python print statement, and I have it commented, obviously, because of course this is Java. As soon as I uncomment it, Java is going to start shouting at me. So I'm going to keep that commented, and I'm going to highlight it to select it and copy it, and I'm going to paste it right here. And let's see what we need to do to modify this to make it work in Java. Well, first thing, semicolon. Second thing is system.out. Now we've seen print, we've seen print line. What is the distinction between those two? They both print whatever's inside the print command to the output. The difference is print line puts a new line afterwards, right? So now we're going to see a new one, printf. This is formatted printing now, printf. And when we do printf, that's how Java knows, okay, we may expect to see placeholders. I call these pairs of curly brackets placeholders. Java says we may encounter a placeholder within this string that's going to be printed, and it's expecting that as a result of this printf. And what else do we change? We're going to delete this dot format. We no longer have to use a format function where we're sending over parameters. We don't do that. So I get rid of the format function, I get rid of the period, and therefore I even get rid of this extra pair of parentheses right here, right? I get rid of that pair of parentheses, but I need to put a comma. So this is a printf. I'm printing this entire string, and I put a comma after the string, followed by my list of the things, in this case they're all variables, that I would like to print within those, that I would like to have placed within those placeholders. So one more time, if this were Python, it would have been dot format, and nope, it's trying to do Java, dot format, and I would have had all this stuff here inside a format function, so a pair of parentheses. So I'm going to delete the parentheses, delete the dot format, and I'm going to put a comma in its place. Cool. The only thing that's remaining is, how does Java identify what I call a placeholder that we're expecting to put a value inside, right? So Python, we're expecting to put this A over here inside this first pair of curly braces. Then this next curly brace, we're expecting to put a B, and so on. So Python identifies that placeholder with this pair of curly braces. Java does not use a pair of curly braces, and I'll be honest, I prefer Python here all day. I like Python better with that pair of curly braces. Java does not use that. Instead, Java uses a percent sign. You might think, hey, that's easier. It's one character instead of two characters. Java uses a percent sign. And you might be thinking, okay, wait, so can I not even print just a percent sign like that? No, you can't, because when Java sees a percent sign inside a string, it's expecting that you're going to have afterwards a variable, maybe x. You want to print x because you had just defined x above as int x equals 8. And so Java would be also expecting that you're going to use formatted printing. But even now, though, the percent sign's not enough in Java. In Python, a pair of curly braces is enough, although it's better to put more stuff inside those curly braces, and we're going to look at that in just a couple of minutes. But in Java, we need to put the placeholder to signify that something should go there. We have to put the percent sign for all of these. But after the percent sign, because this is Java and it's about data types, we need to specify the type of data that's being printed. Now, in this case, we're printing these variables, the values inside them, A, B, C, D, E. And what's the type of data? Integer. So we need to specify here the type of data that needs to get stored. So basically, imagine if you could type, okay, percent integer, right? That would be the idea. But we only need one character. And it turns out, maybe it's kind of weird, but D is for integer. Now we've seen F. F is for floats or for real numbers, a double. D is for integer. So what we do is these placeholders that we see in Python, we replace them with %D for Java. It's that simple, %D, and %D. And that %D simply says it's a signal to the Java compiler that, hey, pay attention. What comes here, it's got to be an integer, and it's going to look after the string, and it's going to expect to see a comma, and it's going to expect to see many things that will ultimately be inserted into this print statement. How many things? Count the %Ds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and therefore we have 5 things that comes afterwards. Perfect. Run this. Where is that first line? I have a typo somewhere. Oh yeah, I have this stuff. I didn't put a %d here, right? That's where that error was. But I want to get rid of this anyway. I don't want this. Let me get rid of that. And run this. And this is exactly what we want. We got the exact output. Now, notice though that this build successful is on the exact same line. We don't want that. There was no new line that was printed. And I said, recall that we have print and we have print ln, right? Where the distinction is printing a new line. Well, with printf, there is no automatic new line that's being printed. So if you want to put a new line, you manually come here and just simply put \n, and that will give us the exact output that we're looking for. All right, so now let's come back to the Python example and let's look at one more. So imagine that we have a series of students and we have all of their data saved in variables. These are Avengers. We got Bruce Banner, computer science, GPA, senior. For a 4th-year student, got Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, psychology, GPA 4.0, second-year student, Thor, and then we got Tony Stark, right? And notice how the printing that we see is very nicely aligned in these columns because we want to see the formatting component of formatted printing, because until now, we haven't seen that. We've only seen using formatted printing to insert stuff into the placeholders, right? That's all we're doing is we're inserting these variables inside these placeholders. We're not actually doing formatted printing yet. So we want to see how we can actually format this data when we print it. And so how can we align this nicely in Python? So imagine that we have this first student, Bruce Banner, saved all of that person's data into variables. Banner saved into last name student 1, Bruce first name student 1, and so on. How can we print all of that information? Well, the first thing is we have to then realize, well, how many things do we want to print? We want to print 5 things, right? So we want to print the last name. We want to print the first name, right? I want to print all of this. That's 5 things that I want to print. So when I realize I want to print those 5 things, the first thing I'm going to do is this. I'm going to make a print statement with 5 placeholders, and then I'm going to do a dot format, and I'm going to put the 5 variables. The only reason this is on 2 lines because it's not fitting. I could scroll out, but then it's going to be harder to, I can scroll out, but it's harder to read, right? So I'm going to zoom in so you can see it a bit better. So here I have the first variable, last name, first name, department, GPA, and then the class standing. So this is the first thing. I'm just going to take those 5 variables. I'm going to put them inside the dot format, and I'm going to put 5 placeholders. Let's do the same thing in Java. Let's do the exact same thing. I have the variables here, and I did not even change them to camel case. You know what? It's important. I'm going to do that very quickly. Last name, student 1. Here we have, let me just change this. And student 1. Here we have GPA, student 1. And I'm going to have to paste these into the format, but that's okay. It's better if you're going to do it right. Use the styles of the language. So bear with me just so I can update this. I'm copy pasting each of these over. Let's try that again. Copy, paste, copy, paste. All right, that wasn't too bad. So now, just like I did in Python, I want to edit this statement. We've already understood that in Python. I want to edit it in Java. So in Python, I printed 5 things, right? But there's still no formatting. We're about to do the formatting in a moment. Well, in Java, it would have to be what? We'd have to have 5 of these % signs, but each one has to have a single character afterwards representing the type of data that's being printed. So what type of data is being printed with the first thing? Well, it's Banner. It's a string, so it's going to be %s. The next thing is Bruce, %s. The next thing, computer science, another string, %s. This thing right here is a real number, a floating point number. That's going to be %f. And then finally, senior is going to be %s. So if I want to make this into Java, I need to put a semicolon. I need to make this system.out.printf. I changed all of those placeholders to percent some character. And then I need to get rid of this last parenthesis. I need to get rid of this parenthesis, the format, and I'm going to put a comma. Now, when I run this in Java, I have a typo again. Let's find the typo here. Which one is this? What did I do here on the typo? Oh no. I love errors, but not when they're live, and I'm trying to do this quickly. Yep, I got an extra percent here. Why? I don't know. Per 1% D, percent D, percent D, percent D, percent D. That looks better. Done. Okay. So notice now, come down here. I have this entire statement that I just printed. And if I were to print that same statement here in Python, it's going to look hideous, right? I don't know if I print this in Python, it'll look identical. Everything's back to back to back because I'm not using formatted printing yet, right? Well, now how do we space this nicely in Python? Not Java, in Python. How do we tell Python, you know what, print this string banner, this last name banner, but don't just print it right here and then print Bruce right next to it like this. Don't do that. Instead, we want to tell the Python interpreter to print banner over this many spaces. So we need to count that many spaces. 1, 2, 3, let me count it this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we want to print the string banner over 15 spaces, but aligned to the left. And then we want to print Bruce over, this is also 15 spaces, aligned to the left. And then we want to print computer science over 22 spaces. I've already counted it, trust me, aligned to the left. Then we want to print this GPA over its 10 spaces aligned to the left. And we want only 2 digits after the decimal. So we want to try to understand that. And this is where this is those numbers right here. So here's what we come up with. We see that the first column, this first column of data right here, is 15 spaces wide, regardless of the length of that person's last name. It's 15 spaces wide. The second column is also 15 characters wide. The third column is 22 characters. The fourth column is 10 characters wide. And notice I say that the fifth column, it doesn't matter how wide the column is. I want to clarify that, right? So here, for this GPA column, for it to be lined up correctly and aligned correctly, it doesn't depend on its own column. It depends on the column beforehand, right? So each of these have to be length 22. And when all of these are perfectly length 22, then the GPA column's lined up. So in order for a column to be aligned, it depends on the column that comes before it. So here, in order for this column, this class standing column, in order for it to all be aligned nicely, it depends on the GPA column to have each of these be length 10 for each one. The point of that is, since this is the last column here and nothing comes afterwards, the length of this column, it doesn't matter because nothing is coming afterwards. Are we confused on that? I don't know. Nothing comes afterwards, and therefore it doesn't matter, right? Whether we have here 6 letters, or we have 9 letters, or we have 8 letters in a word, nothing comes afterwards, so it doesn't matter. I'm not worried about printing extra spaces for the purposes of alignment. So with all that in mind, now that we know the number of spots, what do we do in Python? Instead of just putting nothing inside the curly brackets, I'm going to put a colon S that tells Python, hey, I'm printing a string. Well, check that out. That's kind of like Java, %s, right? Here in Python, we would have had this curly brackets. Now in Java, we put %s. Well, inside the curly bracket, to tell the Python interpreter you're printing a string, you put :s. To tell the interpreter that you want to print that string over 15 spaces between the colon and the S, you put 15. Well, in Java, between the colon and the S, not colon, between the % and the S, we're going to put 15. This is the Python statement. Let me do the Java statement. So between the colon and the S, we put 15. Well, same thing in Java. Between the % and the S, we put 15. And then finally in Python, we can choose left alignment by putting the left arrow or right alignment by putting the right arrow. Honestly, so much better, so much clearer in Python. In Java, we have to put a minus sign for left alignment. Without a minus sign, it's right alignment by default. So here, long story short, this is going to be minus 15s, minus 15s. I already have the s. This is going to be minus 22s. Then we have here a left align 10.2f. I hope we understand that in Python. The 10 means 10 spots, 10 characters in Python. And then the 0.2f says only 2 digits after the decimal. Well, same thing. I'm just going to copy it just to show you. Same thing in Java. Between the percent and the f, I'm going to put 10.2. And I'm going to put a negative before the 10 to show that it's left aligned. So now when I run this, check it out. I didn't put a new line on that statement above. I need to put a new line. So we'll come down to the next line. And I'll put a new line here. So now we get the proper spacing, which is exactly what we expect. So if you understand this in Python, you should be able to understand this in Java. Once again, it's just syntactical differences. So finally, let's say I had int id equals 1, 2, 4. I'm just making up an ID number. And then we had string first name equals Michaela. Last name string last name equals Roberts. I don't know where that's coming from. How about Robers? There you go, Robers. And then finally, let's say double GPA equals 3.8. And how about even care? Now let's do it as a string. String letter grade equals an A. Let's say there's some class, some grade, just whatever. Overall, no, I don't want letter grade. I want something else though. We'll keep it like this. So if we wanted to print, we want to print a statement like this. Michaela Robers ID number 1241454 has a GPA of, let's say the GPA, because this is going to be an exact calculation stored in the database, so imagine it was 3.86924. That was the GPA. And we want to therefore say Michaela has a GPA of 3.87 due to rounding. We want to print that statement using formatted printing. How do I do that? Well, first, I'm going to do a printf. Secondly, I'm going to highlight the entire statement I want to print. I'm going to paste it in here. And then I'm going to put afterwards a list of what I'd like to print. That should have been Michaela. So I want to print the first name, followed by I want to print the last name, followed by I want to print the ID, followed by I want to print GPA. So now it's just a matter of going to each of those pieces of information and replacing the actual value with a percent and the data type. So this is going to be %s. This is going to be %s. There's no formatting or spacing needed here. This is going to be %d. And then, oh, this is formatting here. This is going to be %f, but we want to put 0.2f. And let's run that. And let's see. Boom. But I forgot to put my new line. All right. Hopefully this is a nice short and sweet video and clarifies how to do formatted printing in Java. Because you would not want to do this with concatenations. It's hideous. Let's go. Less than 30 minutes. That is fantastic. Comment, reach out if you have any questions. Take care.